so they can show us what they can do with the brand new Joker and in the brand new Elseworld.
Plenty. Own unique traversal attacks, whole new talent tree, and even, new legendary items that play specifically with that character's playstyle. So on a Joker, as you say, he's from an alternate universe. He's not kind of the prime Arkhamverse Joker. And you meet him at a point where, kind of parallel to the Squad Zone adventure in the kind of launch story, he's been part of a different Suicide Squad that was also fighting against Brainiac and lost.
Yes.
So he's been captured by Brainiac's forces. He's the Arkhamverse Joker, you'll know. He's, got something to prove. He's a bit less Machiavellian.
Yes.
And he's a bit more kind of aggressive and frantic and energetic. And he's got a kind of theatrical, almost like a performer energy, like a sort of vaudevillain type kind of energy that he brings to combat and to interaction with the rest of the squad. So yeah, he's coming in with a different perspective. And I think it'll be
the city in a haphazard and chaotic way. It's almost akin to a drunken master style traversal, I consider it. You can be using it to have a violent explosion up into the air and then go and glide down as you then flip it over to a surfboard across a rooftop, knocking over enemies, and all of this chaotic carnage that he's causing just feels very Joker.
I think it's not only how you're traversing around the city, but how that also translates into combat. You're going to these incursion missions, the mayhem missions, taking the fight to...
which makes him very deadly mid to close range. We have the Jester, which is very close range. It's all about crowd control, survivability, melee, killing things up close and personal. We've then got Firestarter, which as it sounds, very much utilizes fire, burning, explosions, grenades, big booms, really just setting the world alight. And then we have Ringmaster, which is for the show-offs. Anyone out there who wants to spend more time in the air, killing things while airborne, looking fabulous while doing it, that is totally the style for them.
We maybe have a little bit more...
A lot of forward momentum that you can kind of curve and bend around to go where you want to go. Similarly, you can shoot when you're kind of in the air with Joker, but you're always moving. And that ends up giving you some really high-scale opportunity moments where you can like launch over a rooftop. As you're flying over it, you can't arrest your momentum, but you can make use of it to shoot down on enemies, right? I think it's the same. Timing that well with Joker's Traversal becomes a really interesting skill challenge where you can kind of get a broad spread over a wide area or a tight spread on a small target for more damage if you're close to them. So getting all of that just right, I think the players are going to really enjoy that journey.
Awesome. Well,
in his reality, he was his last surviving member of the Suicide Squad. Brainiac has captured him and is obsessed with him, wants to find out what makes him tick. This has kind of backfired on him, though, and has infected the actual terraforming process. So
enemies will be gaining episodic buffs and resistances to certain tactics and abilities, so the squad will have to keep evolving in order to stay one step ahead and manage this new threat. And find out what the pros and cons now of these new changes. So one example being that bombers might now suddenly drop more grenades reliably, or Batman and Fuse will now be susceptible to deep freeze. So it's finding these things out, and only by playing it and trying what works and what doesn't work, players will discover these new challenges.
So now that we've
New Me Mutator, which just adds a resurrection mechanic for the enemies. So you kill them, they'll keep coming back. The only way to stop this, though, is you can counter them or shield harvest or poison them. So there are ways around this, but again, it's ways for players to take these systems and then put a spin on them. These ones have stripped out a lot of the activity elements, and they really focus on the beautiful art of killing things dead. So players can really have a lot more choice now of how they experience the Elseworlds Endgame and how they want to push those mastery levels. So there's picking the missions they want to do and using that to bring up their mastery level. We've also got time-limited buffs for the squad. So they use them, they apply to the entire squad, and they really help turn the tide of battle. One example being the Diablo Blaze aura. So what this does is this applies to the squad, and this gives them this Diablo Blaze effect on them on a range. So players can run up to enemies, set them on fire, and move around the area and just setting fire to absolutely everything. So it's up to the squad then to really determine how close they get, and they have to balance then. Do they, they get up close and personal, or do they really try and defend themselves at the same time? So these are time limited.
And we're also adding the new poison condition to the game. This does not only damage over time, but allows you to synergize with other items. And so Scarecrow is the feature villain of this episode. If you play with his gear set, you will get extra bonuses for per tier, per item, actually. If you were playing with a different villain in a different episode, then it would go to that villain's gear set only, and Scarecrow would no longer be the active villain. So with things like this, Scarecrow Tier 1, you would get damage reduction, critical hit damage, more shields, all the things that help you survive and really punish the enemies for just existing. So say bye to Brainiac's troops, basically.
Through absolutely free. Just play the game.
Fantastic, and play the game, I'm sure.
Hey guys, my name's Jav. I'm a full-time content creator covering pretty much every looter shooter going, and you may recognize me from some of the previous Insider episodes, as I was part of a very small group of creators that got early access to the game. The first build that you can see here is what we've called the Poisoned Harvester. Now, this build revolves around poison, as well as harvesting and countering your enemies to spread that poison, and poison is a key part of Scarecrow's infamy set, which will be used as a primer when it comes to activating some of the awesome talents. Now, to get the most out of this set, we've equipped a full Tier 1 Scarecrow infamy set. This will give us bonus critical hits and apply poison on enemy hits. And if you kill poisoned enemies, this also triggers Poisoned Mind. This can stack up to 10 times and last up to 30 seconds. And each stack of this will increase your chances of triggering enemies to become shield harvestable from poison damage by 5%. Now, whilst that sounds like a small amount, this is actually on tick and not on the initial application of poison. So by applying poison to a huge group of targets, you will actually see some huge damage numbers. Now, this build also harnesses Dr. Poison's Maru 2 Injector, which is a notorious auto rifle. Enemies hit with this weapon become poisoned, making it a very easy applicator and primer to triggering the infamy set. I also paired this with the Epidemic Pistol, and this is really to make the most of the talent, as countering a poisoned enemy has a 50% chance of spreading poison to all enemies within 30 meters. And if you can do that as a critical counter, this will switch to a 100% chance. Alongside that, we have the Rotten Feast, which is a legendary flail, which is Joker's melee weapon. This will increase the chance of putting poisoned enemies into a harvestable state by 50%, and harvesting poisoned enemies will drop 100% more shield. And finally, the Harvest Express, which is a legendary lucky charm. This is where melee hits on an enemy consume 20 combo, but it will make all enemies within 15 meters harvestable. As you can see, this is incredibly rewarding, and by having overcharged overshields, it will keep you in the thick of the action and all your enemies begging for mercy. Now, Joker is fun, wacky, and has some hilariously fun builds. We also have the slow-mo Crit Clown. This one specializes in slowing down your enemy, juggling them, and prioritizing crit damage. This one's going to prioritize the Great Suspender melee weapon, where melee hits put enemies within 10 meters in slow motion. And we've also paired that with a notorious grenade called Black Mask's Target Priority. So this is where your grenade does no damage, but instead causes enemies hit by it to get launched in slow motion, whilst taking 200% more damage for 30 seconds, and become targeted by enemies afflicted by Venom Frenzy within 200 meters. Now, by juggling our enemies using our melee weapon and grenade, we're going to use the Turkey Shoot shotgun. Now, this firearm does 250% increased critical hit damage, and when enemies are in slow motion, you get 100% crit hit chance against them. And to finish off this build, we have the Magic Number, a legendary neck bomb, and when you juggle an enemy, the enemy explodes and hits all enemies within 25 meters, and enemies hit by that explosion either become poisoned, put into slow motion, or become harvestable. Now, this build alone creates many avenues to juggle your enemy, whether that's sliding through them by gliding on rooftops, using your melee weapon or grenade. They all unlock high crit chance and crit damage options, and make for a very fast, fun and snappy build. So as you can see, there's a lot of build diversity, and the biggest question you have isn't just the build you're going to use, but who are you going to drop from your squad when it comes to trying out the Joker.
Hello, I'm Abrax, a massive looter shooter fan and a content creator for the genre over at youtube.com/@thatabrax. And welcome to a look at the newest character on his way to Suicide Squad Killer Justice League, the Joker. We've been given the chance to get hands-on with the character early and test out a few builds in one of the new incursions coming with Season 1, Laugh Riot. The first build I have to try out is the aptly named Burn Baby Burn. This build takes full advantage of the Joker's love of fire and explosions. using a collection of notorious items and talents to make sure that if it isn't ablaze, it soon will be. The build combines new notorious items like the Polka Dot Man's Spotty Explosion, which is a next level cluster grenade, with each of the clusters having a 50% chance to spawn more polka dots, making this a great way to spread Diablo Blaze over a massive area. Add in the Joker's Temper and High Crimes talents, and you're getting an additional 50% damage to burning enemies, and firearm kills on burning enemies spawn grenade ammo. Top this off with the Heat Wave Molten Skin shield mod for survivability through that 90% damage reduction when you burn a new enemy, and you're in for a pretty good time. For me, the Polka Dot Man's Spotty Explosion grenade is a must-have for Season 1. This grenade is all kinds of chaotic in the best kind of way. Next up, I get a chance to play with the new Tier 1 Scarecrow Infamy set, the Poisoned Mind, with a build nicknamed the Maru Poisoner. The goal with this build is to apply as much poison to as many enemies as possible, then reap the rewards of the Infamy set using a few extra notorious items to give the set a bit of a boost. Starting out using the Dr. Poison's Maru 2 injector to apply poison on hit, tagging as many enemies as possible, then getting kills on poison enemies to start stacking Poisoned Mind, which thanks to the 2-piece bonus increases the chance of poisoned enemies to become shield harvestable per tick of poison. This then opens up the chance to get stuck in with the Mad Hatter's 3-leaf clover melee weapon, to start smacking enemies around, doing huge damage to harvestable enemies, with the 3-piece bonus of the Tier 1 Infamy set giving us an extra 50% damage to shield harvestable enemies, per stack of Poisoned Mind. You can see with this build how the game loop begins to develop where you're poisoning enemies and then swooping in to finish them off with a shield harvest. And if I want to spread that poison a little bit further, I can swap to the legendary assault rifle Epidemic, which has a 50% chance to spread poison to all enemies within 30 meters on a counter. This goes up to 100% if I manage to get a critical counter. Unlike the first build I tried out, the Maru Poisoner doesn't use the effect it applies as its main source of damage, but instead uses poison as a type of primer, setting you up to string together some hard-hitting shield harvest attacks. I have to say, I am a fan of the new notorious assault rifle Dr. Poison's Maru 2 injector. Applying poison on hit is a solid and reliable way to apply poison at a range. Plus, its secondary fire giving you an extra 250% crit damage to poisoned enemies makes stacking Poisoned Mind a breeze. I have to say I've had an absolute blast playing the Joker, and a massive thank you to Rocksteady for letting me get hands on with the character and taking him for a spin early. I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of crazy builds the community comes up with when this guy goes live with Season 1. Now let's get back to Derek and Kane on the couch. Take it away, guys.